Okay, so I just want to, real quick before we begin our lesson today, we're talking about graphing exponential functions. But before we do, I want to summarize some things. So an exponential function looks something like this. Notice that they don't have the 1 plus r in there that we've been looking at for the past 2 lessons, because the reason we write that when we're dealing with word problems is because in a word problem they tell you the rate at which something's growing, which is the r value, and you have to know to add the 1 to that yourself. But when you're doing graphing, that's already done for you, so you're already just looking at a completed growth factor. So we'll just call it b instead of 1 plus r. But that's what the 1 plus r is. It's our growth factor. Now what we learned is that this piece here is our horizontal asymptote. We learned that if we take this piece here and this piece here and add them together, we get our y-intercept, right? What? 0, comma, AC. That's your y-intercept. Okay. And then we also saw the effect of the growth factor, right? We see that whenever b is greater than 1, the graph has this kind of a shape to it. Whereas whenever b is between 0 and 1, it has that kind of a shape to it. Now, something that we didn't talk about yet was what if I put a negative in the front of this a? Because remember what that does to a function when you put a negative in front of it? Multiply. Huh? Flips it. Yeah, flips it upside down, right? So, if you want to know what the shape of your graph is, you actually have to look at 2 things. You have to look at the b and the a. This is if a is positive, what I've already got on the board here. But if the a is negative, this one over here will flip upside down and will look like that instead. That's if the a is negative. This one would look like that. Okay, so this is when a is positive, and that's when a is negative. So I'm going to turn this into a little chart.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
All right, now I'm going to turn these into steps, okay? So the first thing we're going to do when we graph today, let's title this How to Graph Graphy. Exponential functions. How to graph exponential functions. So if I go through and just change all these into steps, we'll have it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to graph our horizontal asymptote. So we'll call that step 1. So we're going to go through and just find out what that C value is, and we're just going to draw a horizontal line at that point. Okay. Put your text. Read it out loud right now. Read out that note you're texting to the class.
Okay, thank you.
Is that what it says? I'm okay, thank you?
Yeah.
I want to read it. All right. Step 2. Step 2, we're going to plot our y-intercept. Step 2. Plot your y-intercept. Okay, so we're going to start by graphing that horizontal asymptote. So we're going to plot our y-intercept. After that, we'll call this thing here step 3. We're just going to basically,
Can you slow down? What was step 1?
after step 2.
Then step 2 was plot your
What is
y-intercept.
What?
One is step 1 is horizontal asymptote.
Step 1.
Identify it.
Graph. Yeah, we're going to graph.
You didn't say that, sir. I'm here with you. I'm here, but I was still stuck on drawing the box.
All right. It's because Kiana was texting. And she's still. Read it.
No.
And then number 2 is graph y.
Out loud. In front of the class.
Mr. Bailey.
You can't read? I'm sorry.
The second one is graph the y-intercept.
Yeah, plot the y-intercept, yeah. Which is graph. All right. Either way.
Yes. I have one question. Is a negative a?
Would you guys like me to write like the words?
No, it's okay.
Because I can't. I did that in my last block, but this kind of flowed differently, so I was doing this. Do you guys want me to write the words out?
No.
Okay.
This is easier. Well,
Okay.
it's faster, but
Yes.
that negative a and a, one's negative, one is positive. That's how it's supposed to be. Or is
Yeah,
it, like,
so-
the opposite?
So I'm gonna get rid of this for now because I don't want this here. The point is that there's a number in the front, right? And so when that number in the front is positive,
Yeah.
we're in this row. When it's negative, we're in that.
Thank you. Alright. Step 3.
Well, make sure you're I thought this was going to go okay, but there's a lot of questions, so maybe it's not clear. So make sure your notes make sense to you, so that when you come back to this a week from now, that'll make sense. Okay. But yeah, so there's our steps, you guys. Step 1, plot your horizontal asymptote. Step 2, plot your y-intercept. Step 3, throw the shape on there. You're good to go. Now this is, anytime you're graphing a function, there's always a fast way and a long way. The long way always works. The long way to graph any function is just plug numbers in, get an answer, plot the dots, and connect them. So if you wanted to plug in like 10 points, you're eventually going to get the shape. But nobody wants to do that. It takes so long. So we learn these shortcuts like, oh, well, if I know this is my horizontal asymptote, that's the y-intercept, and that's the shape. I can just throw it on. Okay, so that's why we're learning the shortcut. So let's go ahead and get down to business here. Go ahead and write down example 1. I'm going to do one example, and then I'm going to let you guys try a few, and then it'll close out our day.
Mr. Bailey, I see you like singing new service.
The third one is to
Step 3
draw
was the
the
box.
shape.
Wait, what'd you say about it?
He's flexing on us.
We're going to do this one together. So here we go. Step 1 is to graph your horizontal asymptote. So my horizontal asymptote is -1, right? I'm going to abbreviate that, HA. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the y-axis a -1. I'm going to draw a dotted line because that's not really a part of my graph. It's just an invisible barrier that I can't cross. So that's my horizontal asymptote. That is the line that my exponential function is trying to approach. Okay. Now the next thing I do is I'm going to do my y-intercept. My y-intercept is found by taking the A and the C and adding those together. So it's going to be 0,
2.
3 plus a -1, and yes,
yeah.
it will be 2. So we can abbreviate that as 0, positive 2. So I've got a y-intercept up here at 2, right? Now the last thing I have to do is I've got to figure out where is, like, what kind of a shape are we dealing with here? Now you got to look at two things. You have to look at your A value and your B value. So go ahead and see if you guys can kind of predict it. Don't shout it out, but go ahead and just see if you can predict which one it would be. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take that shape that you think it's going to be, and we're going to put it on this graph. That shape has to do two things. It's got to hug this asymptote. It's got to get flat up against there, and then it has to hit that dot. So the correct shape was this one.
Yes.
Now, why is that the correct shape? Because this is greater than 1, so it is an increasing function, and since it's positive, it just stays that way. If this were negative, we would flip it. Okay? Yeah.
Did you say V is greater than 1?
Yeah, 5. 5 is greater than 1, right?
Oh.
All right, so that's the graph. Vamos a hacer un poco problema. All right, this one's for you. Danielle, what's our horizontal asymptote? Okay.
Ooh.
Cool. And Anicia, what's our y-intercept?
Is it one?
It is 1. Because -3 plus 4 makes 1. All right. Alex, what shape did you use? A, B, C, or D?
Isn't it -1?
No, because A plus C,
Okay.
-3 and 4 would make shape D? No, it's actually going to end up being C. Now, here's why. Because since B is greater than 0, it goes like this, right? But since the A is negative, it flips it upside down. So it's C. And so we're going to be connecting this dot and hugging this asymptote using that shape, and it would look something like that. Okay. Next. Just try that one. No, wait, don't look, don't look. All right. Now this.
You're getting sick?
Sean, what was our horizontal asymptote? Okay. Cool.
Oh, no.
Haley, what is our y-intercept?
Is it 2 and 2?
Say that.
Was it 2 and 2?
2, 4, 3? No. But, so where'd you get the 3 from?
Because I wasn't sure what to do with A, so I was like, if you do 0 or 1.
Good. So it is 1. But it's -1, right? So what would -1 and 2 make? Yeah. So our y-intercept is actually going to come out to be 1. And then Zell's gone. So I shall ask Jackie, which shape? A, B, C, or D? D is correct. So it's decreasing because of this. So it would look like this, but it gets flipped because of I'm not doing that right. It gets flipped because of the negative in front. So it looks like this.
Oh. Isn't it negative? The negative does flip. Wait, I'm so confused. Wait, it's negative and it's 0. Wait, which one is
D. A
I
is
got the
negative.
table wrong.
A is negative, and B is between 0 and 1.
I think I rolled my table. Wait, you have the right graph. No. Oh, you put. I didn't see